far the best starting point is to slop a 4A GZE into the engine bay, which is quite simply the supercharged variant of Toyota's 4A GE twin cam. And if in fact you follow this rewarding path, you'll ultimately end up with an engine bay looking something like this.
I love this bit.
Of course, there's other options, 3S GTE and 4A GE20 valves and the like, but the true benefit of the 4A GZE is the way the supercharger whine drowns out the hideous 96 FM Gary Shannon breakfast show. After sliding into a Hachi Roku's woefully inadequate 1980s seating, you immediately reach for the steering adjustment, until you discover the damn thing is as high as it's going to go, and you're just going to have to live with it. This initially gives the car a feeling of being seriously cramped, which is in fact misleading. It's only the low steering wheel position and the tight pedals that give the impression of being crushed.
The layouts and look of the interior is of course absolutely outstanding. If you have a penchant for cars that have been produced from crappy black plastic in the 1980s, it's as ugly as sin and dated as hell, but all the important bits are visible and within reach. But then again, if you wanted luxury, you'd be buying a Lexus.
The reach to the gear stick is incredibly short, allowing for some rather nonchalant flicking between gears when you really should have both hands on the wheel. Once you start moving and gain a feel for the vehicle, the wheel position issue takes another step towards being redundant, as the car begins to feel more like a go-kart. The impression is reinforced numerous times, firstly because the Hachi itself feels like a small car surrounding you, and then again as you arrive at every corner and the car displays a total ignorance of the concept of understeer. The non-power assisted steering is initially quite heavy as you tip in, but there's no doubt whatsoever that wherever you point it is where it's going to go.
It's almost as if when designing the AE86, Toyota just did not consider the lateral adhesion qualities of standard production car tyres. This car is just blissfully unaware that it's expected to understeer when pushed hard, so it just doesn't, ever. The handling, the response, the total lack of understeer. The beautifully tight pedals that lend themselves to heel and toe. I love this car! I love this car!
The supercharger comes in with a real shove in the back, nice and low in the rev range, due to the electric clutching system Toyota saw fit to engineer onto the front of it, for, fuel economy or something. This aside, it feels somewhat like a very small and efficient turbo, except that it never runs out of breath, all the way to the rev limiter. Caution should be exercised here when trying to extract more boost, as it's possible to overspeed the relatively small supercharger, at which point it starts peeling itself apart from the inside out. This aside, they're quite nicely put together, and capable of delivering a steady 12-pounder boost sunrise to sunset.
When you couple this stirring delivery of torque with the AE86's unshakable handling poise, you're on a winner every time you find a road with a bend. It's absolutely beautiful. The tail will quite easily break away when provoked, and even with the Australian spec open centre diff, this is relatively controllable. Of course, for serious sideways action, you really do need a limited slip differential rear end. On my personal favourite, the backyard locker.
When opting for some prolonged slide work of serious distance with a naturally aspirated variant, The Hutchie benefits greatly from a roll cage of some description to keep the chassis nice and stiff. This is not so much a fault of the car as it is simple mathematics. There just isn't enough material in the 86's construction to keep it as stiff as it really needs to be. Whilst initial impressions of this demigod-like hatch are somewhat cautious, the Hachiroko turns out to be a surgical scalpel to the S13's machete, an electric steak knife to the GTR's chainsaw, a truly razor-sharp weapon to be wielded with respect and finesse for fear of losing a finger, or perhaps a whole hand.